Hello there, Watsonator here with another RetroArch tutorial that I have been wanting to do for a while now, and sorry about the long hiatus. I had some comments on my other videos and streams asking how I customize my RetroArch interface, and more specifically, change the platform icons, add screensavers, personalize backgrounds, custom playlists, and all that good stuff. Considering how much time I spend browsing through game lists and changing settings, it is important for me to have a clean UI that is both aesthetically pleasing and easy to navigate. Overall, RetroArch is fairly customizable and allows for a lot of variety in how you want to display things. Most of this information is pretty straightforward and might be redundant to those of you familiar with RetroArch, but hopefully I can save you some time by explaining how a few of these things work. Use the timestamps for specific topics. If this is your very first time using RetroArch, you should probably check out my startup guide. I will add a notation and link it in the description. Also, keep in mind that this is not going to cover topics like custom shaders, or bezels, or anything related to in-game graphics. These are just some quick and simple ways to enhance the stock RetroArch interface. I will cover this other information in separate videos. Okay, I have just opened up a fresh install of the newest RetroArch for Windows, version 1.19.1. I recommend updating if you haven't done so in a while. There are a few changes to how the backgrounds function in some of the newer builds. Now as we look through the UI settings together, I will show you how I would personalize a clean copy of RetroArch. I have a few notes on the side here, so bear with me as I try to go through this in a hopefully logical order. I do have a PS5 controller connected just for easy navigation, but the only thing I have done with this new install is import a few example ROMs for different systems, as you can see here. I have enabled thumbnails, and I've also changed the menu layout from Ozone to the XMB style. Now that setting is located at the bottom of user interface right here, and this setting may be good to change if you're on a device other than a PC, so I'll briefly go over that and show some examples. Now GLUI might be a good option if you are on a tablet or possibly a large TV. I think the way that the playlists are formatted can also look really nice with this one. Ozone is how RetroArch comes automatically formatted. It does allow for less customization, but uses up fewer system resource than the XMB style. RGUI might be your best bet if you're on a handheld device or a Raspberry Pi, as it goes for the old school, minimal retro aesthetic. For the rest of the video though, we're just going to stick with XMB, as I feel like it allows for the most customization, and it's really the easiest to use and navigate on a PC. Also, keep in mind that when you're changing certain settings such as menu layout, you're going to have to come over here to the first column and restart RetroArch in order for the setting to take effect. Another layout option we can change is in user interface appearance, and it's just called layout. Now I keep this on auto, but you'll see here that you can select console or handheld, and that just affects the spacing and the scaling. So if you are on either of these devices, that could be a good option for you. We're just going to keep that on auto now though. Okay, so the first step in really making a UI pop is simply by enabling thumbnails. I've already done this, but in order to do so, you just come right over here to Online Updater, Playlist Thumbnails Updater, and you'll see all of your playlists right there. So you can just select them and it will try to import from an online database using the no intro naming format. If you run into any issues where it's not pulling them in, I have a whole video dealing with troubleshooting, box art, thumbnails, all that, so check that out. I'll be sure and link it in the description if you have any issues. So as far as settings for those go though, for the thumbnails, if you go over to User Interface Appearance, and then come down a little bit, you'll see that we have some options for thumbnails. So we can change the primary thumbnail if we wanted. The way I like to do though is actually just add a secondary thumbnail. And instead of box art, I like to just do a screenshot. You can also do title screen. But if we do box art and screenshot, you'll see that now we have both of those showing. I don't like how it shows on the left though, so I'm going to go back to where we were, user interface appearance, and change the thumbnail to vertical disposition, and now it stacks them on top of each other. I think that looks much better. And I also want to mention that there is an option to adjust the scaling size of the thumbnail if you want it a little bit smaller depending on what device you're on, and you can also upscale those images if you so desire. Okay, we are moving on to background customization now, and these settings will likely make the biggest visual impact of anything. Under User Interface Appearance, towards the top here we have a few different options dealing with backgrounds. The shader pipeline is referring to the animation you see of the ribbon there. This can be changed to Ribbon Simplified, Simple Snow, Snow, Bokeh, or Snowflake. And we compare that with a color theme of which there are quite a lot to choose from. One of my favorites is the dark color theme paired with the bokeh shader pipeline. I think that looks for a very nice looking UI. In general though, I like to include my own image, so if you go to User Interface Appearance Background Image, you can look through your PC for any image file. I would recommend picking a high resolution file, maybe something like a desktop wallpaper. I'm going to pick this image of Mario here, Mamma mia! But you'll notice that the text is sort of hard to read. So you can go to Background Opacity and lower that some. Yeah, that looks pretty nice. Right above that you have what's called the Color Theme Alpha Factor. This is very similar to Background Opacity, but it's for the color theme. And right now, since we have a custom image, it is overriding any color theme that may be in play. Just know that the Color Theme Alpha is basically like the Background Opacity, but for the themes. The shader pipeline, however, can actually be enabled even though we have a custom image for our background. That was added in a relatively recent update, I believe. So you could just add whatever if you so desire. I'm going to just leave that off for the time being. Now, even though you can see that text a little better, it just doesn't fit. If you come down to User Interface Appearance, you'll have some font options. There's the red, green, and blue with numerical values you can adjust to make just about any color under the rainbow. For example, if I turn blue on 0, we get this yellow, which is suitable for Mario. I think that looks pretty good, but the font itself just doesn't match. However, RetroArch does allow for custom fonts. I'll be sure and include a link in the video description to a website that has a lot of good fonts for you to download for free. When downloading these fonts though, make sure you pick the ones that are a TTF file type, as it seems like that's the only type it accepts, not an OTF or anything else, just make sure it's a TTF. I actually found a Super Mario font. And wow, that looks great, look at that. We have a Super Mario font, the yellow color with that background. Please don't sue me, Nintendo. The only thing I can think of that I might want to adjust even more here is the icon theme. So under User Interface, Appearance, can go down to where it says Icon Theme, and you'll notice that we have a few options of different theme packs which we can choose from. These come included with the RetroArch download. I've seen how these look for the most part. I think Retro System would look pretty good, so I'll just try that out. And for sure, that is a good example of a UI. I'm just going to go through though and select a different one just to show a different example and make something a little bit easier on the eyes for the rest of the video. I'll give you a tip. If you hit start on a controller on any of these settings, it will bring back whatever the default value was. So if I hit start there, it just brings back the color. If I hit start on font, it's going to bring back the normal font. For this though, let's choose a different image. I think that looks pretty good. So I want to choose a font now that is sort of futuristic, spacey. I think I know just the one. I believe it was this one. Oh, that's perfect. As you can see, the font, the icon theme, and the background settings are really the three big ones, and these are gonna be what makes your UI really pop. Those are the major game changers, but I'll touch on a few of the minor settings you can tweak to sort of fine-tune things. Let's go back to User Interface Appearance section, where we have a couple of more topics to cover. Scale factor is straightforward. You can just increase or decrease the amount of UI scaling if you so desire. Dynamic backgrounds, I skipped over this earlier. Basically, what this setting does is enable you to change the wallpaper that is showing based on what you're viewing at the time. So for example, if you're scrolling through your playlists and you're currently on an NES playlist, you could have it show an NES background, and then maybe you move to a Sega Genesis playlist, and boom, it swaps over to a Sega Genesis background. Very neat, but I'm going to touch on this in just a little bit. Vertical fade factor, also straightforward. The more you increase this, the more that it will start fading out the top and bottom of the list you're currently on. You'll see there at the top and bottom how you can't see the text as well as the middle. That's all that does there. Shadow effects, I recommend leaving this on. This just adds a drop shadow to your icons and text to make things a little bit more viewable. Switch icons, that just changes that little on-off icon to actually just saying on-off. Just preferential there. Then you have some things dealing with the ticker text animation and speed. This is just when you have a very long display text in the menu. You can have it scroll left or right or at a different speed or with smooth ticker text if you so desire. And on that topic, there's actually some menu navigation settings you can adjust here. It's easier to just show you than it is to explain it, so I'll just pick what I like. The first two I choose easing out bounce, and the final one here I choose easing out expo, and now I will just kind of navigate around the menu. You see how it bounces in and out there as I move around or switch from icon to icon? It's just a little animation to kind of spice things up. So that's about it for the appearance section. If you come down just to the user interface area at the very bottom, or actually close to the very bottom I guess, you'll have these menu screensaver options. And this is how you turn on a screensaver. To test it, I just recommend turning it on 10 seconds so you can see what it's going to look like. I like Starfield myself. I think that it's a little slow, so I usually will turn up the animation speed to 3x. And I will just sit here without touching anything for 10 seconds to see what that looks like. And perfect, that's exactly how I would set up my screensaver. So let's adjust that now to be 300 seconds, which is 5 minutes. And there are a bunch of other settings in here that are pretty straightforward that I won't bore you with. I did want to take a look at menu item visibility. In here you can choose to show certain things or not. Like if you go into settings, for example, maybe you don't want to show audio because you never use that. Or maybe you want to turn off this network or this power management. If you want to just declutter your UI, there's a lot of items you can turn off in here, as well as in the on-screen notifications. This notification visibility section right here. There's a lot of notifications you can turn off if you'd rather go for a more immersive style. But yeah, like I said, I don't want to bore you with all of these because they're very straightforward. I did want to talk about playlists though, as I do get asked about this from time to time, and there are some visual settings you can adjust. First, I wanted to put the font back on the default one, just so you can discern between uppercase and lowercase letters, as that other font did not allow for that. Come to Settings, Playlist now, instead of User Interface. And here we have some options for the different playlists. You can adjust the history or the favorite size, if you want to sort alphabetically or not, change the date and time style, a lot of straightforward stuff once again. At the very bottom though, we have on-demand thumbnail downloads. I do like this setting. It tries to pull in thumbnails for whatever you have highlighted if you don't have any thumbnails yet for it. So if for some reason they ever update the database, bring in new thumbnails, if you have this on and you select something, if a thumbnail exists and it's named correctly, it'll just automatically bring it in. It does have a severe performance impact, but I personally haven't run into any issues with it, so try that out. At the top of this though, at the top of the settings playlist, you'll find Manage Playlists. In here it lists all of your current playlists, and then you can adjust them individually. So for example, you have the thumbnail settings that we adjusted earlier, but now it is on a per playlist basis rather than the entire UI. So that's pretty nice. The important one is at the top though. This is the labeled display mode. I get a lot of people asking me how to clean up their lists and get the region codes off. Well, you can do that right here. If you go into it, you can say, remove everything you see in parentheses and brackets. And then if I go out to my TurboGrafx 16 list, you'll see now that it just shows the flat game name without the region code in parentheses or the revision type or anything like that. So that's a nice setting you might want to turn on. Okay, now I want to show you how to bring in your own custom playlist. So say you had like a list of NES ROM hacks and you wanted to pull in a separate list next to the NES list here without actually going into this current list. What you're going to want to do is go to Import Content, Manual Scan, find wherever you have your folder of ROMs. So I just have mine on the desktop as an example for this video. And right there I have a folder that's just called Nintendo Entertainment System Hacks. In there I have 4 different ROM hacks that I'm using as an example. System name, this is an important one that you want to make sure you put on custom. It will not work if you don't put it on custom. It will not create its own separate list. And then custom system name is whatever you want to name it. I'm just going to name this Nintendo and then Nintendo Entertainment System Hacks. Now the beginning there, the Nintendo Entertainment System is exactly how the main list is labeled. So if I just add hacks on the end, this should put it right next to it alphabetically. You can add the core if you wanted. I know that these are zip files. Scan inside archives and then start the scan. And we'll back out and we see right next to our NES list, there are the 4 ROM hacks that I have as an example. However, I'm sure you notice that it shows the stock RetroArch icon up there for the system icon as well as for the sub icons for the individual games. It's all just the rocket. Well, luckily we can change that. We are going to have to hop out though and take a look at some files. Hit F to pop out of full screen mode, and you're going to want to locate your root RetroArch install folder. Inside of there will be a subfolder called Assets. Then select the current layout that you are on. For us it's XMB. And then select your current icon set. For us it is Retro System. Inside the PNG folder, you will see the entire icon set and all the image files associated with it. Long story short, it just follows a specific naming scheme in order to correctly show everything in the system. And for us, all that means is that we have to drop in a PNG file into this folder that matches the same playlist name as our custom playlist. Well, ahead of the video, I pulled out a couple of icons from a separate icon pack, which comes with RetroArch, and renamed it to match up with our custom name. In this case, it's Nintendo Entertainment System Hacks.png. Just going to drop that in there. And then for the sub icon, it's the same thing, except at the end you add -content without any spaces. So each individual entry will now show this icon to the side. We just have to drop it in there like so. I'll go ahead and restart this RetroArch copy. Hit F for full screen. And when we go over, you now see that our custom playlist shows both of those icons that we just renamed. It just required putting it in the correct spot with the correct format name. We do not have any thumbnails, so similarly, we can do something for the thumbnails. F again, go back to the root install folder, and now locate the folder called Thumbnails. In here you will have each of your playlists. I talk about this more in my thumbnails video, so check that out if I go through this a little too fast. I'm just going to create a copy of this because I know that my playlist is named very similar. It just says hacks at the end. And then inside of that new folder, you should have 3 subfolders. Create them if you didn't copy like I just did. I have to go through here and delete all this real quick since I copied it from the already existing NES one. And then inside of the appropriate folder, you can just drop your custom images. Now I already have these made up, just for time's sake. And these are custom images. Each of them has to match the exact name of the hack that you are representing. And these are boxart, so I'm just going to drop them right into boxart. And then full screen. And there you go. They're already appearing. So now we have custom images for our custom playlists as well as custom icons. Of course, you may realize that using this method, you could very easily create your own icon sets. It just requires having the images in the correct folder and naming them accordingly. If you were to combine that with dynamic backgrounds, which we talked about a little bit earlier, the possibilities really are endless. I'm personally not that great at creating my own icons and backgrounds from scratch. This is a much more involved process and would basically require its own video. So I recommend checking out OTG Gaming's video on this exact topic if you're interested in dynamic backgrounds. I'll be sure and link it in the description. He does a great job of breaking this down in a much quicker manner than I probably could. Overall, I think this user interface looks pretty good, and it's basically how I would personally customize my own RetroArch from scratch. I would like to mention though before I go, that this current install of RetroArch that we just customized is not necessarily gameplay ready, as I didn't bother with things like downloading cores, adding all of the necessary BIOS files. It was basically just for demonstration purposes, so once again, if you need help with any of that, check out my other tutorials. I didn't want this video to be as long as it already is, so I'll go ahead and just call it good for now. More RetroArch content is coming soon. Let me know if you have a request for something specific you'd like to see. Leave any other questions you might have in the comments below, and I will do my best to help out. I post a lot of good information and other links in my video descriptions, so be sure and look there if you are confused or would like to find other resources. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.